Welcome back to what I taught this week. Today we're going to work out if your warm-up is a waste of time. Here we go. One of the biggest challenges that we face as musicians is that we don't generally get enough time in the practice room. Chances are that even if you happen to be a professional musician, you don't get enough hours to work on the things that you want to or need to take your playing to the next level. So it really upsets me when I see people, particularly my own students, wasting their time on exercises that don't do them any good. I was talking recently with one of my students in Utah, and he was showing me a great warm-up exercise that he got from another YouTube video. And on the surface, it seemed to be great, but as we dug a little deeper, it turned out that it was a colossal waste of time. I'm going to take you through the exercise, see if you can spot why it's junk. So, here's the offending exercise. I'm going to play it, we're going to work out what's so bad about it, and then we're going to learn how to make it better. So, we're going to take a 1-octave major scale, and we're going to play that major scale on the A string around the cycle of fourths. What does that mean? Cycle of fourths is like the circle of fifths, but backwards. We're going to go anti-clockwise around the circle of fifths, because chords, when we're playing songs, like to move in fourth. They like to move up a fourth. So if we start in C, I'm going to count 4 degrees of the scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. That gives me F. So my next key center would be F. From F, 1, 2, 3, 4. B flat. From B flat up 4. E flat. So always going up to the 4th degree of the scale. That's up a perfect fourth. The original exercise is done to a backing track, but let's not bother with that. Let's just call out the keys and see if we know our cycle of fourths. Here it goes. I'm going to start in C. F. B flat. E flat. A flat. D flat. G flat or F sharp. B. E. A. D. G. Then up another fourth would take me back to C, and I'm home again. So let's start with the good things about this exercise, because it's not all bad. Firstly, we're playing the major scale, which is an important thing, right? That's a huge understatement. The major scale is one of the most important concepts that you can get your head and your fingers around, because it's going to be the backbone of in excess of 90% of the music that you're going to play for the rest of your life. So yes, definitely play the major scale. That's a box ticked. The other thing is that teachers are always telling us to play things in all 12 keys. It's part of being a rounded musician. So yes, that's great. We're doing a bit of note location on an A string as well, so those are all good. The bad thing about this exercise, as I see it, is the prescription. Now, in the original video, the teacher, and I won't name names because I don't see the point in starting any more internet beef, the teacher is asking you to play this exercise with a play-along every day for an hour a day for 30 days. 30 hours of the same exercise at the same tempo, which to me is a grotesque waste of in excess of 28 hours of your life. So how can you tell if your practice routine is made up of important musical things or it's just a colossal waste of time? Here are 4 questions to ask yourself. Question 1. Do I understand the exercise that I'm playing musically? I got my student to play me this exercise, and I stopped him, I think, when we got to about B flat major, and I said, can you spell me a B flat major scale? He couldn't do it. So that indicates to me that he didn't understand the exercise. And if you don't understand what you're doing on a musical level, what you're doing is kind of pointless. You don't know how you can use it in the real world. So the cure for this, as I see it, is to limit your focus. Don't go after all 12 keys straight away if you don't know your key signatures. Start with C major. Can you spell a C major scale absolutely cold? Just recall the pitches without even finding them on the bass. If you can do that, you know the scale. Once you can understand it academically, then play it on the instrument and then add some new key centers. Don't stretch yourself too thin because you won't learn the stuff in enough depth. Question number 2. Is the exercise that you're playing made of musical content or is it maths? Personally, I wasted a ton of time as a teenager using a book called Bass Fitness for my warm-up, and I probably wasted about 40 minutes a day for a good 3 years, I think. And that book, like many others, you can get bass gymnastics, it's probably bass vegan CrossFit or something like that. These books all have the thing in common where they take 1, 2, 3 and 4 and they permutate them until you've exhausted yourself, this sort of thing, and it kind of sounds like calculus, not music. All that sort of stuff, all over the fretboard up to about 200 BPM, if you can manage it, and that is supposed to give you good technique. The problem with that is I've never played that in a song, nor do I want to play that in a song because it's not music, it's maths, and presumably you picked up the bass to play music, not weird digital patterns. So why would you waste your time in the practice room on anything that isn't music and that you can't take out and use in the real world? I get questions from students quite a lot. I also see tons of posts in forums. The same question: do you have an exercise to solve this technical issue? You know, typically, oh, my 3rd and 4th fingers are weak and they're not independent. Do you have any exercises for that? Because I'm struggling to play this piece of music. Well, just take the piece of music that you're struggling with and make that your exercise. Get better at playing music by playing music, not inventing weird patterns that don't make any sense. Number 3, is the exercise that you're playing a drill or a warm-up? Coming back to the original offending exercise, playing it with a play along at the same tempo, or in fact in any strict time, means that it's not a warm-up. And your focus is not on the sound that you're making, it's not on your technique, it's on the time. Are you on the grid? Are you in time? Are you playing exactly in sync with the backing track? So if you're doing that, you can't devote enough attention to the sound of every single note. So if you're taking this thing, if you're going to play a major scale, that's fine. If you can't play the major scale in 1 octave, in every key, and spell those notes, then you need to work on this. And if you're doing that, don't do it in strict time. Do it slower than you think you need to, slower than you want to do it, but really pay attention to the sound of every note. And I'm always asking myself, after I played a note, did that note sound as good as it could? And if it didn't, why not? What can I do to go back and fix it? So forget metronomes, forget playing on the grid, forget any sort of time. Every note lasts for as long as it lasts, and it's just all about the sound that you are making on the bass. So if I play a C major scale, I just want to give it my full attention. And within that, I'm imagining my waveform as if I'm being recorded, which I am. I want to make sure that there are no gaps in my sound, unless there's a rest written on the piece of music that I'm playing. I want all my notes to be linked, to be connected, because that's the hardest thing to do for the left hand, is to play long connected notes. Easy to get on the bass, play short, choppy notes all day and call it funk, but it requires a lot of left hand control to play this with a smooth, connected sound. So, if you're drilling your technique, that's great, that's fine, go for gold, take that thing that you've been working on for months and crank that tempo, see how fast you can get it. But if it's a thing that you're just getting into your comfort zone and you don't really understand, you don't need to play it in time, and you shouldn't. I think it's sabotaging your progress if you try and implement a metronome too soon. Question number 4, is the exercise difficult enough? Coming back to this original thing that we were playing, let's assume that you can spell the major scale you're working with, your technique and your sound are exactly as you want them to be, and you can play it up to tempo in the keys that you're working with. You can play the hell out of that exercise and you understand it on every single level. That's great. You need to stop doing that as soon as possible and do something else, because otherwise you're just repeating yourself over and over again and you're not growing as a musician. If you go out on a gig and all you've played is major scales up and down, what's going to happen when you come to improvise, right? Solo. If all you play are scales, up and down, that's all you're ever going to play. And no one will pay you to play a major scale up and down. You need to start making music with it as soon as possible. How do we do that? We're about to enter the wonderful world of scale sequencing. So there are two ways of sequencing a scale. The first is rhythmic sequencing. The second is melodic sequencing. Let's start with rhythmic sequencing. To apply rhythmic sequencing to a scale, I'm just going to take a number of notes and play that number of notes from every degree of the scale. Let's start with groups of 3. I've played a lot of C major, so let's play F major. So I'm going to play F major in groups of 3. 3 notes from every degree of the scale. Nice and slowly. Here goes. On the way back down. You'll notice there that on the way back down, I visited the 7th degree of the scale, the E below the F as well. That just adds a little bit of extra excitement, a bit of extra tension and resolution. Why not? We also want to get away from this thing that scales start and end on the root note. As bass players, we're biased towards the root. Obviously, we have to be. That's our job description. If you can't do that, then you're in trouble. But after a while, we need to realize that that thing is just one of many, many ways that we can play the notes of F major on the instrument. So if we try groups of 4, I'm going to change key and I'm going to use B flat major. Again, can you spell me a B flat major scale? Maybe, maybe not. Instead of doing it here, I'm going to run out of space pretty quickly if I play B flat in 4 note groups here. So I might just start from the E string. And my position now runs past the octave. I'm going to run it as high as I can without leaving this position. So I'm going to go from B flat, and I can include C, D, and E flat. So I can get up to an 11th, an octave and a perfect 4th above the root in one position. It just gives me a little bit more room to hang out in this position and get the most that I can from this exercise. Again, I'm teaching myself a different position for B flat major, so I've now sort of doubled my money in that respect. So B flat major, groups of 4, here goes. Now on the way back down, we might expect to just descend everything. But I can challenge myself by changing the direction that I'm playing and moving in the opposite direction to the way that I'm going on the bass. So I could go up on the way down. I'm going to start from B flat, because that's the highest note that I can start on and still get a group of 4 ascending. So from B flat, so in that, I'm really trying to tick off every degree of the scale in my head to make sure that I don't miss any out. You can experiment with larger groupings. 5s are pretty interesting. A lot of Jaco Pastorius stuff has groups of 5, among other players. Other players are worth checking out, not just Jaco. 5s, 6s. If you're playing a 4-string bass, you might run out of space fairly quickly and have to work on some position shifts. But again, that will push your comfort zone a little bit. That's rhythmic sequencing. Let's look at melodic sequencing. So melodic sequencing, also known as intervallic sequencing, is where we take a given interval and apply that to the scale. What we've really been doing so far, when we play a basic major scale, you're playing it in seconds, because all these notes are a major or a minor second apart. Things get more interesting if we start to use bigger intervals. So we've played in C, F, B flat. Let's move to E flat major. Again, can you spell me an E flat major scale? It's getting a bit tired, but it's an important point to make, I think. I'm going to take my E flat major scale and I'm going to play it in thirds. I'm going to go E flat to G, move to the 2nd degree, F to A flat, G to B flat, etc. I'm going to go up on the way up, and then you'd expect to come down on the way down, but I'm going to go up on the way down again just to challenge myself a little bit. So here we go, nice and slowly. E flat major in thirds. Up on the way down. I could also flip that around. Maybe I could go down on the way up as well. Let's go down on the way down. Let's be nice. So that's thirds, a very pleasing melodic sound. Let's try diatonic fourths. Fourths are going to be challenging because we're usually moving to the same fret on a different string, and it's going to be hard to make this thing sound connected if we're using the same finger to jump. But I like a challenge. Why not? Here we go. Let's change key again. Next in the circle of fourths is going to be A flat major. So A flat major in fourths. Let's try that. Let's come down on the way down. Again, visiting that note below the root, added tension, added resolution, and increased fretboard and harmonic awareness. There we go. Another interesting thing is to mix that ascending and descending, but within the scale itself. So I could go up on my first pair of fourths and then down on the second. Same on the way down, up and then down. Things get really interesting if we start applying bigger intervals. Let's try fifths. I'm going to stay in A flat major just to get really comfortable. I'm going to run out of space fairly quickly, so I might try and integrate a position shift or two so I can get to a sensible stopping point in the scale without running out of room too quickly. So here we go. I'm just going to ascend everything. A flat major in fifths. That was a poor position shift. Let's try it again. Slightly better. On the way back down, ascending. So with that, I would probably want to go back and practice that a bit more just to make sure that my position shifts are optimized in the best way possible. People don't want to hear your technique. They don't want to hear that what you're doing is hard. They just want to hear the music, not the technique. So there, I'd really want to just go through it and work out all the possible options for position shifts and then pick the most sensible and practice that to death for a while. After fifths, probably my favorite interval to use is going to be sixths. So again, I'm going to try and position shift. I'll try and do it a bit better this time so I can get to a sensible stopping point on the bass and maybe use a bit more of the range of the fretboard so I'm not restricted to this kind of octave and a fourth position. So let's go up and down inside the scale, A flat major in diatonic sixths. So there are some things that you hopefully won't have done before with scales that you can start integrating into your practice routine and pushing your musicianship a little bit further. Just to recap, here are those 4 questions that you need to ask yourself to decide if something you want to practice is good or if it needs to go in the bin. Number 1, do you understand the exercise on a musical level? Can you spell the major scale or whatever scale it is that you're working in? Number 2, are you practicing musical content or mathematical patterns? Number 3, is it a drill or a warm-up? Are you practicing the thing too fast and should you be slowing down and focusing on the sound rather than the tempo? And number 4, is the exercise hard enough? Are you pushing yourself and progressing musically every time you pick up the bass?